Hello and welcome to Moderate Fantasy Violence, a podcast about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and maybe occasionally the world outside it. I'm Nick.
And I'm Alistair.
And this fortnight, I guess as some sort of sign that the cultural release schedule is returning to normal, we have not one but two Marvel Cinematic Universe releases. First up, we'll be looking at their first actual film release since, I think, the late summer of 2019 with Spider-Man Far From Home. We've got Black Widow, the long-awaited solo film for the Avenger played by Scarlett Johansson, coming out so overdue that the character is literally dead, and also introducing Florence Pugh as her replacement. And then we'll be covering Loki, the Disney Plus TV show featuring another character from the Avengers movie. It's Tom Hiddleston, alongside, again, a new variant of him played by Sophia Di Martino. But before we get into all of those, Alistair, what else have you consumed in the last 2 weeks? Did you manage to find anything else Marvel to do?
Sadly, I did not find another Marvel thing to consume, but I have seen another film in a sign, like I say, that things might be tentatively returning to normal, in that I did go to the cinema to see a Danish film called Another Round, starring Mads Mikkelsen, who has been in an MCU film, so I guess it is still an MCU-adjacent property in the most sort of tangential way. But this is a really interesting sort of comedy drama starring Mads Mikkelsen as a teacher who, him and his friends, they're going through a sort of midlife crisis. They feel they've lost the sort of joie de vivre, and they come up with this idea, as they call it, an experiment to test that. Is life better if you maintain a constant blood alcohol level of 0.05%? So yeah, they then endeavour to booze as much as possible and keep themselves slightly tipsy. And in the sort of way these things go, at first it goes well and then it goes badly. What I really like about this film is it's funny, and there's a lot of quite funny bits, but it really deftly shifts emotional gears. It kind of moves quite well from being first funny to being quite sad and tragic, and then sort of quite hopeful and joyous later on. I don't want to obviously say too much about the ending, but I was really impressed by how it could kind of change sort of emotional gears without it seeming like it was lurching all over the place or was like a film in search of a tone. It felt very much consistent, but was able to take you on this emotional journey. And yeah, it's just very interesting. There's, Mads Mikkelsen's very good. There's some very funny bits and some very dark bits. I'd recommend it.
Yeah, no, I've heard about this film. It sounds like an intriguing premise, and obviously, as a viewer of Hannibal, I've always got time for Mads Mikkelsen.
He's very good, and there is a lot of buzz around this film. It won the best film at the BFI London Film Festival last year. It won the best foreign language Oscar this year. Yeah, I think it's causing waves amongst film reviewers now that it's finally come out.
Yeah, it does definitely sound like something that's going to, shift towards very depressing at the end, because I just can't imagine it sounds like it's going to end well, even though it also sounds like it's obviously going to be quite fun when it lasts, which I guess is as good a metaphor for drinking as a whole as anything.
Yeah, it is a very good film about drinking. Like, I've listened to a few podcast reviews who have pointed out that it really does capture what boozing is like the euphoria, but also how things can tip from fun into tragedy, and again the sort of darkness and isolation that comes from serious heavy boozing. But yeah, though it goes to a dark place, like I say, it's not a sort of leaving Las Vegas misery picture. There's a very joyous celebration of life kind of ending, which is very good. In fact, the end of the film, the last scene, is really excellent. So obviously I shouldn't say anything, but yeah, it's really worth sticking with the whole film right to the end, because the ending is really good.
Yeah, no, I do need to try and keep an eye on the streaming services. Surely Netflix will buy it. They love subtitled things.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. Apparently there's a plan to remake it set in New York with Leonardo DiCaprio playing the Mads Mikkelsen role, which I know, why is America so keen on remaking subtitled film? I think Bong Joon-ho, director of Parasite, said you have to climb over the 2-inch bar of subtitles to get to a world of brilliant cinema. But apparently there are some people who non-English film means they won't watch it, so it needs to be remade in English.
Well, in many ways, isn't the subtitled version just a lengthy trailer for the eventual English version?
Yeah, for many people, yes.
But no, I know, I do need to at some point watch the Mads Mikkelsen version just so I can feel superior to anyone who just sees the DiCaprio version. Do you know who's directing the DiCaprio version?
I do not know if there's anyone attached at this point. But yeah, it would depend on who the director is, and it might be good. Who knows?
DiCaprio to go full method, I assume, and be relentlessly pissed for the entire time.
Yeah, I don't know if they would do this, how you would do this as a method acting film, or just trying to maintain the constant blood alcohol level of 0.5% or 0.05%. I don't know if that would lead to a productive filmmaking experience.
I mean, the more he suffers, the more likely he is to win an Oscar, apparently, so.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, he's already eaten raw moose carcass to win an Oscar, or whatever he did in Revenant.
So Constant Foster's really only a small step worse than that.
Yeah, but at least Carlsberg, a nice Danish beer.
It's true, that can be the sort of the shout out to the original.
Yeah, but it is a film that is weird for a film that's quite silly and like it's got some good comedic bits, kind of low key comedy. There's no kind of fall out of your seat laughing bits, but it is very humorous, especially in the first third to a half. It is really also like some places quite deep. Like there's a lot of references to Kierkegaard, the like Danish philosopher, thrown in there, which is interesting. I mean, they're all teachers, and one of them is a philosophy teacher, so it kind of weaves in this philosophical undertones. You know, and it's got a really interesting way of also like putting like text messages on screen that's quite visually interesting. And I think like having text communication is like a thing that cinema really struggles to portray. But they have these interesting things like the screen would just go black and white graphics will flash up. Like whenever they test their blood alcohol level, the screen just goes black and you see the figure for their blood alcohol level. And, you know, because some of the plot revolves around text messages that they just kind of appear white on a black screen. So there are these more sort of arty, avant-garde moments in a film that is also like a film about drunk middle-aged men.
I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less from subtitled cinema, to be honest.
That is the truth.
More importantly, did you ever get to see Fast 9?
No, not yet.
Bloody hell, you're dragging that out.
No, yeah, listeners, keep in touch. Eventually I will watch Fast 9 and update you on it. But yeah, I had one opportunity to go to the cinema last weekend and I chose to see another round instead of Fast 9, so sorry about that.
It's only yourself you're letting down.
That's what I've been doing for the last week, avoiding Fast 9, embracing Danish cinema. Nick, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
Well, don't worry, listeners, because I have not been doing anything quite as high-minded. Sticking vaguely within the superhero oeuvre, I have been catching up on Legends of Tomorrow, or affectionately known by me, and I think me only, as Legends of Tomorrow, probably the most D-list of the Flash Arrowverse spin-off shows, in which a bunch of characters who first appeared in those shows, well, that's kind of how it started, but I have also introduced a few of their own characters now. Yeah, a bunch of assorted DC characters, some of whom originated in Flash or Arrow, are put together on a time-travelling spaceship called the Wave Rider to solve various historical problems. I think long-standing listeners, or certainly long-standing readers of my top 10 TV shows, will be aware that this is a show which started off as something I very much did not like. I think at one point in my top 10 TV shows, a few years ago now, I specifically listed all of the Flash Arrow shows except for Legends as, I think, number something of the year, 7, 8 maybe. And yeah, whereas now, to be honest, Legends is the only one I'd even consider listing. It's very much had a big turnaround. I mean, I suppose it could just be one of those shows where it's like you have to get through the first season, but like barely even that. The first season was just not very good. If you could bring yourself to just skip it, start with season 2, if not season 3, to be honest. Season 3 is when it gets really good. So yeah, at some point, it started off as a slightly flat show about these characters who were just seemingly together in this show because they had them, led by Arthur Darvill as Rip Hunter, a sort of slightly generic trenchcoat wearing time-travelling anti-hero man. And then, yeah, they've kicked out him, played up increasingly the angle that this is a really weird bunch of random characters stuck together. A lot of them don't particularly like each other, and they're not really particularly well suited to their job, and they just keep fucking up, and they keep getting thrown into these bizarre genre parodies of slasher movies or Shakespeare plays or historical films, and it's increasingly become a borderline sitcom, although one with a good eye for like character stuff, a good episode or so of chuckles, and then there'll often be a nice grounding character moment or two towards the end to remind you that this is like a 40-minute drama and you should also care a little about the people. Plus, it's got the TV version of John Constantine in it from the Constantine TV show a few years ago, who honestly does a lot better here in this sort of broad sitcom structure than he did in his own show for some reason. I'm enjoying him quite a lot. So yeah, I don't know if many people watch this. Pretty sure it's the least successful of its franchise, but unfairly I feel, although I haven't seen the new Superman and Lois show, and I've never watched Batwoman, I'm pretty sure this is the best one still.
That's interesting. I can imagine that the Constantine character would do well as in a bunch of sort of strange people and misfits, as, you know, he's a sort of outcast man with sort of occult magic abilities, is very much, you know, separate from kind of a mainstream sort of superhero-dom, so I mean, it sounds like they've kind of like put together a found family of different characters, and it sort of works in that way.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, Constantine's very much played as kind of the grumpy uncle with a heart of gold, who is like constantly telling them to piss off, but loves them really, that sort of thing. Yeah, I think most of the characters from Flash Arrow have now left, but the lead character, I think, is still Sarah Lance from Arrow, played by Katie Lotz, who was introduced as kind of minor character in Arrow and has now been killed off like at least twice, but they keep bringing her back because she's, I think, one of the best leads in this franchise at this point, or at least she's incredibly good at carrying this sort of comedy drama thing on her shoulders and both taking it seriously and not taking it seriously at exactly the right moments. She's been in it since the beginning, and when Arthur Darvill buggered off, I think to be in Broadchurch season 2, and then he just sort of came back very sporadically and eventually faded away. He left Sarah Lance in charge, and she has correctly become the main character of the show. And yeah, they've done a good job of building the sort of weird found family around her, and Nick Rory, who is just a man with a flamethrower, who was in The Flash as a sort sort of novelty bank robber and is now a grumpy time-travelling superhero. It's a very random combination of characters who, as I say, were just put together because they're there. It's just evolved into this sort of lovable misfits thing that I just find quite entertaining. Plus, there's a good, because of the sort of random mush of characters, they've managed to get a good sense of progress by just turning characters over semi-regularly. Like, at least one character leaves the team every series and someone else comes in, someone from DC mythology, often someone relatively obscure. Yeah, it just keeps things fresh, it keeps things turning over, whereas a lot of those shows, especially Flash, cough cough, have become a kind of endless cycle of the same few people standing in the same sets, endlessly having the same conversations. I stopped watching Flash a few seasons ago because of that. But yeah, Legends of Tomorrow does a good job of keeping things interesting, and honestly, it's the only one I'm still enthusiastically following. I'm still considering picking up Supergirl and watching the last season or so because it's finishing. If Superman and Lois gets a UK broadcaster, I may watch it because the reviews have been pretty good. But for the most part, I think me and this franchise have somewhat parted ways. The days when I was watching 4 episodes a week of it in EastEnders style are sadly behind us.
Interesting. So a lot of these are characters from other shows, but does the plotline interweave other shows? I mean, you're able to follow this without watching, now that you stop watching, like, kind of Flash and associated shows.
Yeah, pretty much. They have, like, I mean, they haven't this year due to COVID, but they usually have, like, one crossover a year where a bunch of other characters appear and they all fight some sort of big communal thing. And you could just pick up and watch the shows. I mean, it's a bit annoying because some of them are on different channels in the UK and air at different times, and it's slightly frustrating. But theoretically, I'm happy to just watch the other shows for the crossovers and ignore them the rest of the time.
Sounds good.
I mean, I guess it's easy for me because due to a combination of comics knowledge and having seen the first few seasons of a lot of them, I know who everyone is anyway, so it's not hard to just pick them up for one episode.
I'm glad that the Legends of Tomorrow are continuing, and the joke also has some more life in it.
Implausibly renewed for season 7 now. I honestly didn't realise that many people were still watching it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to have had much of an impact on, I don't know, in the circles I follow on social media, Twitter and the like. It doesn't seem to be something people are talking about, but I guess it might be one of those things that, yeah, Twitter is not reality. You know, most fandom aren't online kind of, you know, aggressively tweeting about things. They're just quietly enjoying these shows.
Something like that, yeah. I mean, I don't know how much these shows in general are having a cultural impact. I mean, I don't see that many people tweeting about Flash anymore, but that's on season 8. Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think these shows might be on their downslope a little bit. I'm happy to keep watching Legends as long as they want to continue making it for me, but I would not be surprised if this franchise is gone or down to 1 or 2 shows in a few years' time. I feel like it might have somewhat had its peak around that massive Crisis crossover a year or 2 ago.
Well, I guess they finished Arrow and they're finishing Supergirl, so maybe it is entering a kind of wind-down phase.
Something like that, yeah, and I think there's rumours that Flash might be over in a year or 2, finally. But yes, watch Legends. Start from season 3. Especially if you've got a working knowledge of DC, therefore don't need to know who everyone is. Start with Legends season 3, it's really good.
Next up, this episode, we'll be reviewing Black Widow, the first solo outing for Scarlett Johansson's Natasha Romanoff from the Avengers. Set shortly after the events of Captain America Civil War, this film follows Romanoff as she is reunited with the family she thought she had lost and seeks revenge on the man who turned her into a super spy. This film's out now, both in cinemas and on Disney+. So Nick, what did you make of it?
Long story short, and I guess to no one's surprise, I liked this a fair amount, yeah. I don't think anyone's life will be changed, and it's probably doomed to be a bit of a mid-list Marvel film, but I think it's a good way up that mid-list. It has a good sense of its sort of secondary genre, like a lot of these films have been having recently. It's got this sort of secondary genre bolted onto the superhero stuff. In this case, it's a sort of Mission Impossible, Bond-Bourne-esque spy thriller, which gives it an aesthetic to cling to other than generic Marvel. And yeah, it does an impressive job of building a lot of characters from scratch, considering we're just meeting them in this film. There's Florence Pugh as Natasha Romanoff's pseudo-sister, Yelena, the other Black Widow. Well, I don't know, I guess technically they're all Black Widows, aren't they? But she's the main other Black Widow in this film, as well as David Harbour as the sort of comedy-retired Russian Captain America, Red Guardian, and Rachel Weisz as Melina, their pseudo-mother. And these characters come through pretty well. Ray Winston does a good turn as a sort of creepy villain, and it's a decent viewing experience. I'm not sure if I had to compare it to something else, and there's so many of these films it's kind of hard not to. I always compare it to Ant-Man, really. I went in with moderately low expectations, but again, thanks to the characters and a decent sort of work within its subgenre, I came away thinking, oh, yeah, okay, I enjoyed that a lot more than I expected to. Good job.
Yeah, I think you're right that it's very much in the kind of mid-tier of Marvel films. I didn't have an experience like when I watched, say, Thor Ragnarok being the most obvious example, or Iron Man 3 when you just walk out of the cinema and you're just like wow, that was just like non-stop brilliant. That's sort of praising with faint damn. I suppose, if that's to coin a nonsensical phrase. In that, I enjoyed it. It's really entertaining. I went to the cinema to see it, and it was just so good to see like a slice of pre-pandemic normality, a Marvel film in the cinema. Yeah, I do feel this film has kind of like two flavors to it that are sort of mixed together. I feel that like maybe they didn't combine as well as they could have. One is, it's basically the spy film element. They're doing, like I say, they're doing Mission Impossible or James Bond, and there's a kind of family story woven into that, which I think works really well to kind of develop the character of the Black Widow and the other widows, and the family setting and the characters coming together as a family is a really good like character plot arc. But then the other flavour is basically it still has to be a superhero film, and I do feel that the superhero-iness sort of didn't mesh so well with the spy things, because the superhero thing goes like bigger and bigger and bigger. For a film that you're supposed to take seriously as like, you take seriously on the level that you take, say, Mission Impossible seriously, in that it's not, there's a strong element of suspension of disbelief, but this is ultimately a story about regular human beings at the kind of peak of human excellence doing extreme action stuff, but it sits uncomfortably in a universe that's supposed to also have like basically Norse gods in it as well. And when they try to kind of weave these things together, so there's I don't want to spoil too much, but there's like an installation there's a large scene involving a very classic supervillain base thing that kind of strikes me as, it basically seems like something that's from a different film. And it was just moments of thinking that I was kind of into this kind of spy assassin film, and then the kind of moments when it flips and becomes a superhero film led me feeling a bit like uncertain about the tone they were aiming for, or just that these two things don't sit so well together.
I think possibly towards the end of the film it leaks over from sort of maybe drawing from slightly more air quotes grounded spy films like Bourne, or even some of the less ridiculous Mission Impossibles, and by the end it's basically James Bond, or a slightly more ludicrous James Bond. Yeah,
it kind of gets about to sort of, Moonraker or View to a Kill kind of level. Silly Bondness. I mean, I think some of the things that kind of would be far-fetched for a Bond film.
Oh yeah, I think helpfully the Bond films have got so silly over the course of their existence that floating sky base isn't actually that mental.
Yeah. It's the sort of thing they might have done in Die Another Day, but then people would have rolled their eyes and been like, this is supposed to be a serious espionage film.
But hopefully this is in the Marvel Universe, so why not?
Yeah, and there is that fact does help with the suspension of disbelief. I'm not saying it ruined it for me. And also it's one of those things, when I was in the cinema, I was just kind of lost in it and very engaged. And then when I left the cinema and sort of sat down and thought about this film, over time it kind of unravelled a bit, thinking that those tones didn't sit so well together. But it didn't affect my enjoyment of when I saw it. And there were lots of things I liked about it. There are a few more specific criticisms I didn't like about it, but like overall it was like a very entertaining action movie, and there's lots to like about it. Like the cast was excellent, as you say, like everyone I thought was very good. The action scenes were really entertaining, especially actually the climactic action scene. Again, I don't know how much we want to spoil or drop a spoiler warning or something, but the climactic action scene I thought really was like, wow, this is cinema experience, and this is why Marvel's kind of top of their game, because they do these like big cinema action scenes so well.
Well, yeah, I think we've already spoiled that there's a big sky base. Yeah, there's a big action scene aboard that skybase. You might be able to guess a lot of what that would involve.
And it is really spectacular. And it kind of works because a film that's kind of, again, more grounded. It's more kind of vehicle chases and close quarter fighting. And then at the end to have like a huge action spectacle actually really does work as a kind of build-up.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed the pace of it, actually. Sometimes these Marvel films let themselves dawdle a bit in the first half. There's a bit of like, okay, you've had probably some sort of opening action sequence now, let's slow down and meet the lads. But I thought this film did a good job of ticking along and having some more action every few minutes before settling down into endless talking. It doesn't really settle down into talking until the two sisters, Natasha and Yelena, are back together.
Yeah, it is very fast-paced, considering these Marvel films are of a reasonable length, but it does move very, very quickly through things. Even also, sometimes I felt like a little too quickly. There were moments when I felt like they were kind of paying off tension before it had built up. Like the scene when the two sisters sort of first meet when they're grown-ups. Natasha's sneaking into this safe house where Lyanna is, and she's kind of sneaking in, picking the lock. Before you have this moment of like, will she get discovered? The moment that builds that tension, Yelena's already saying, I know you're there. And then they progress quite quickly from that to the fight bit. And I kind of felt that a little bit more breathing time would have given that more tension. And there's a few scenes in the film that are like that. I mean, I do a lot of the time complain about slow pace, so there's a limit to how much I should complain about fast pace. But I felt maybe a little more breathing space would have built tension a bit better.
But yeah, once the Florence Pugh character, Yelena, was in it, I mean, at least half the job of this film is, selling that character. As although I don't have off the top of my head the latest hot news on Scarlett Johansson's contract, it doesn't feel like she's coming back, or at least not substantially. It feels like this is the baton pass from Scarlett Johansson to Florence Pugh as main Black Widow. And as an intro reel for Florence Pugh, this was pretty good. She's got it's a bit of a Villanelle vibe, I think, the sort of combination of smooth assassin fighting with the occasional sort of relatable quip, which is generally sort of a facade covering her pain. And it's a nicely played bit, and I liked her in this and would probably watch the, I don't know if inevitable, possible future Black Widow 2 featuring Yelena.
Yeah, I thought she was excellent. I'm a big fan of Florence Pugh. She's been in a lot of great films like Little Women, which we discussed in the podcast, Midsommar, which is great, like Lady Macbeth. I mean, she's been in so many great films. And yeah, this film did a really good job of building up her character, as you say, passing the baton, creating like a new character who, can go on to be in other films and TV. And also, I think, making her character like similar enough to Natasha, like their sisters. You kind of want the same vibe from the new Black Widow, but also making sure that she's got kind of her own personality, a bit more sardonic than the way Scarlett Johansson did her Black Widow, and I don't know, a bit less impressed with things, and a bit more of the kind of a grumpy teenager. There's a very funny bit when she makes fun of the sort of superhero poses that Natasha throws during fight sequences, which I think is a nice sort of self-aware bit, and also kind of shows the difference in the personality of the two widows.
Well, yeah, I think I'd be interested to see how that character plays without Natasha to bounce off. As I say, she's obviously being set up to do future things, and when she's on her own, is she going to be more of a morally ambiguous ninja? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I guess I shouldn't spoil the post-credit scene yet, but it looks like she'll be back.
Yeah.
I guess the other half of the brief would be to play more of a loving farewell to the Johansson version, and part of me felt like I didn't get quite as much of that as I was almost sort of hoping for, but it does give the character a lot more depth than most previous films have.
Yeah, I mean, she's one of the most underserved characters personality-wise by the broader MCU. I mean, partly because she hasn't had a film of her own before, and also, but characters that haven't had films in the MCU, at least, like Mark Ruffalo's take on the Hulk hasn't had a film. I know there was the Edward Norton version that's so long ago, it kind of almost feels like a separate thing. But I guess you kind of understand the drama in the Hulk. It's built into our culture, the nature of the character, and it means Ruffalo can kind of just play the part the way he wants to, and we kind of know all the stuff that's going on in the background. I mean, for someone like me who's had a sort of, some knowledge of Marvel, hasn't read many comics before doing this podcast, I didn't really know anything about Black Widow, and I only have what I took from the films, and there isn't a lot of characterization there. So I really like that this one did build out the character, her family, her life. That was really, you get really a sense of who she is, especially in how she relates to her younger sister, and just this kind of protective role she has, which she kind of also has in the Avengers.
Yeah, I must admit, I kind of wish we'd had this film before she died. I feel like I'd have felt that death a lot more if I'd seen this film before I saw it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. This should have come out a while ago. And especially because it's very good, and it really helps us build up the character.
There's not really any acknowledgement of her death in the text of the film, except for a post-credits scene. So, future viewers, if we're being guided through the MCU by a helpful relative, you could always watch this film before you watch Infinity War Endgame and just, stop it during the credits.
Well, they've stepped around that issue neatly by just setting it in the past. I know if you go on Disney Plus, you can order the MCU films in the order that they're set, which is pretty much the order they came out, apart from Captain Marvel and Captain America are before all the others. If you're going to watch them in the order they're set, you watch this one after Civil War.
Yeah, part of me expects them to hit the "this is a posthumous film" button a bit harder, to have a flaming sequence of her funeral or something, a bit of the old "let us sit down and sing sad songs about Natasha," but they didn't go there at all.
No, I guess it wasn't really the tone they were going for. In that, I guess they're trying to build up the family is kind of the emotional core of the film, as well as obviously doing the spy stuff and things like that. I mean, there is quite a lot in this film. Like I say, they build up quite a range of characters, and there's some big action sequences and stuff. I guess they feel that just that's over egging the pudding. I mean, maybe there's a way to weave it in, but I think it just doesn't really kind of work with the tone, because they're about a family coming together, and a death in the family is something that breaks a family apart. So I think it kind of goes against the tone. But I do take your point that they could have lent more into the emotional side of it's tragic that she ultimately dies.
Yes, the one post-credit scene where they do tackle it is quite sad, at least before it then pivots into setting up future MCU projects.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe in the next appearance of Yelena, they're going to be... I mean, this isn't a spoiler to say that, if they're going to do a contemporary story of Yelena, she's going to be coming to terms with the death of her sister. And I suppose that will be a more powerful story now that we've seen how they were a family in the 90s, and then they came together as a family again in this film. So they've built the emotional bedrock for a kind of really emotional story for Yelena, the character they're going forwards with, which sort of makes sense. But as you say, it's a real missed opportunity to kind of get more emotion out of the tragedy of Natasha's death.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's Marvel. They're always building forwards. They're always going to throw more to the what's next rather than what's past. But, I think they did a decent enough job. I do feel more empathy towards the Scarlett Johansson version than I did before this, so fair enough.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And I'll be interested to see if any of the other characters, especially the David Harbour one, is obviously big, obvious scene-stealing character, the sort of big comedy Russian dude.
Yeah, he was great, I thought. I mean, the kind of performance of the film, I think, is very much Florence Pugh, especially there's a lot of work to do building the character, but like David Harbour was very funny, and I can see why they wanted a man who's primarily known for comedy to do this kind of what is a fairly meaty, dramatic role, but he is very funny and very good, and he also plays very well off both Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh, so once again, where Marvel excels in the casting, and it's very good.
Yeah, if anything, I thought Rachel Weisz a bit underused, maybe, considering she's very good, and she doesn't get a huge amount to do as Milena in this particular film.
Yeah, I mean, she's excellent. She's got a real head for good projects. She really chooses interesting films. Things like Argo and The Lobster are really unusual, interesting films. So this is obviously an unusual woman-led, woman-dominated MCU film. But yeah, I think they could have given more to do with her. I mean, like I say, there is a lot in this film, and they're building up the family. Again, maybe there is a bit more about the dad than the mum. But she's good and she's a great actress and worked very well. Some of the plot bits of her character, I think, suffer from the problem I had of the fast-paced bits. There are a few moments of her character where I felt a little slower pace might have given space for a little more drama to flourish, a little more good acting to come through. But the film is very much bang, 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 move on, move on, move on, which again is one of the good things about it. But maybe again, one of the things that did suffer in this very fast pace is Rachel Weisz's character got squeezed a bit.
Yeah, possibly. But again, as you say, I quite enjoyed the fast pace of it. I thought it was a enjoyable ride to go on. I think possibly quite nice to come back to the Marvel films with something that's very much, it's fun, it's quick, it's entertaining, rather than let's get straight back into the ponderous fucking mythology.
Yes, you're completely right about that. The way this film moves on and tells its own story kind of in a very efficient way is very good. And it lends itself to this kind of globe-hopping spy story again, that they're kind of like bang location, bang location, bang location. It's of a piece.
Yeah, and plus if you want to watch something that's a bit more concerned with the ponderous mythology, then there was always WandaVision.
There is, yes. One of the other things, actually, that I liked about this film, and it might be an unusual thing to like about it, is it's less funny than some of the other Marvel films. It's still got the Marvel sauce they put in everything, the kind of action plus witty quips. And, especially if Yelena has some funny bits, as I said, the making fun of the poses and things like that. But I did like the fact that they kind of dialed the humour back a bit in this one. Like, there's been some very, very funny Marvel films, like Spider-Man Homecoming or Ragnarok, to say example. They really kind of like high density of jokes, some very funny set pieces and stuff. And I liked that this one they felt the confidence to dial back on the Marvel source a bit, to give this more of a feel of, and this is a serious spy film. We're doing like serious globe hopping action stuff. Again, as serious as like a Bond film or an MI film. So we're going to dial back the humour a bit and allow the dramatic tension to come forward a bit more. And I actually thought that really did work.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, the jokes are still in there, and David Harbour character is basically a comedy character, or at least it's partially a comedy character. But there was a slight reduction on everyone speaking in that quippy voice. I mean, I guess ultimately it's, the Black Widow film, and the Natasha Romanoff Black Widow isn't really that much of a quippy character. So if she's the basis for the film, you have to slow it down a little bit.
Yeah, and Black Widow is a serious character, and I like that they decided to treat the character seriously. Obviously, like, Thor is not a serious character, and it's one of the reasons why they struggled for a tone for Thor movies, so they decided, no, Thor's not serious, let's not take him seriously. And this is the opposite. They found the right tone by saying, we take this character seriously. This is a serious film. It's about, a family that's gone through a lot but comes together. It's about forging strong familial bonds. It's, about serious spy stuff and trauma and stuff. And that's all there and kind of mixed in. And that's the bits of the tone that kind of work when they kind of dial back on their marveliness.
Well, yeah, and the Ray Winston villain, although he's not a particularly developed character, he only gets about 2 or 3 scenes, I think, maybe. But yeah, he's a fairly unpleasant character. I think the film slightly tiptoes around exactly how unpleasant he is, because there's a degree of things they don't want to talk about in these films, maybe because they're a bit squeamish, or maybe because they want to keep their PG, 12A, 13, whatever rating. But yeah, they do a decent job of framing what an unpleasant character he is, while still being slightly squeamish about saying what he does.
Like most big spy movie villains, Blofeld, Solomon Lane from Mission Impossible, he's a constant kind of background presence. He's mentioned a lot, he's kind of in the background, he's out there somewhere, but it doesn't appear very much, which kind of works well, this kind of external presence who's kind of the puppet master pulling the strings, the one who's sending the villains after them, the goons. When he actually appears, it's less impactful than when he's kind of just talked about as this kind of horrible threat and who does unspecified nasty things which are left to your imagination. There is a kind of confrontation between, which again it's the end, so I'm going to avoid saying too much about it, between Natasha and his character, and I felt it's very heavy on kind of dialogue and exposition. That bit didn't work for me so well because again it just lent into kind of the dialogue a bit more, and actually weird, it's one of the books where the pace kind of slipped a bit, but it does then progress from that into again the spectacular final action sequence, so not too much, but I kind of felt that he's scarier when he's kind of not present, like a lot of like big villains.
Yeah, which might be one reason why he isn't present that much. Although he does have his hedge person, the Taskmaster, the person in the Grim Reaper costume, who I get the feeling that's one of the parts that some Marvel fans have taken a bit badly, because that character is somewhat of a sort of cult favourite in the Marvel Universe. He's one of these cool characters who people like because he pops up every so often and is cool. Whereas in this film, again, I guess I shouldn't spoil it because it's one of the towards the end reveals, but they've made some fairly substantial changes to who and what Taskmaster is compared to the comic version, and some people don't like it. I myself am not massively attached to Taskmaster as a character, so I thought it was fine.
Yeah, this is one of the things I hadn't heard of Taskmaster for this film. I thought that character was a great villain for this film. And again, as they're on to Marvel Film 24 at this point, they need to come up with interesting ideas for what their villain's thing is. Like, what's the thing about this villain? And the fact that this one's a mimic is actually, again, an original idea and quite scary. There's quite a good bit when Black Widow does her signature backflip throw to Taskmaster, then a second later, the Taskmaster's learned it and then returns the same move, which is, again, a sort of neat visual illustration of the essence of the character.
Yeah, and Taskmaster, the Taskmaster survives the end of the film. I'll give you that much on spoilers. So I'll be interested to see if they actually use this character again, as I think whether this version of the Taskmaster comes out as a decent change to the character, a lot of that will depend on how much they get out of it, to be honest. I think there's potential there. If they do a Black Widow 2, I'll be interested to see how much of the stuff here returns, whether the whole David Harbour, Rachel Weisz section return, whether the Taskmaster returns.
They spent so much time building up these characters, especially the family, that it would be a shame for them not to come back. I mean, I was excited to see them come back, including the Taskmaster. I thought was a good character, and they there's enough in the kind of Black Widow universe, sort of sub-universe within the MCU universe, unexplored plot lines, implications that are left unresolved from this film for a sequel. This is not a kind of closed story. It does kind of open up the potential path for future sequels. So I hope they come back to these characters, and I thought they were handled very well. But like I say, I'm being the kind of resident non-comic expert. I'm just kind of accepting the character as they're presented on screen, not bringing any of this other preconceptions to my experience.
Even as a comic reader, I'm mostly happy to just let the screen versions be the screen versions. So yeah, I thought they did a decent job of opening up yet another corner of the Marvel Universe. It's just, I guess, another space they have to service, and I'll be interested to see how much service they actually end up giving it. But considering we've now had 3 Ant-Man films, I live in hope that they might be able to get back to this bit as well.
Yeah, I hope so as well. I would watch the hell out of a sequel. Yeah, especially, like I say, I think Florence Pugh is one of the great talents of this generation, or the kind of rising generation, and I think hopefully she's got like a long, illustrious career ahead of her, and I think, reprising this character would be an important part of that. Finally, this episode, we will be discussing Loki, the new Marvel show on Disney+. This show picks up the character of Loki, played by Tom Hiddleston, from where we left him at the end of Avengers Endgame. After escaping death at the hands of Thanos, Loki is then declared a variant and is hunted down by the TVA, or Time Variant Authority, a group who protect the sacred timeline and ensure that everything in time is in its right place. The TVA then recruit Loki to hunt down another variant of Loki who's taking out their agents. So this is a new 6-episode short series that's on Disney+. We've seen the whole thing now. So Nick, what did you think of it?
Well, we did a brief sort of early review of the first couple of episodes way back when, about a few Modern Fantasy Violences ago, and I grumbled that I thought they were missing the opportunity to do like a procedural with Loki as an agent of the TVA alongside the Owen Wilson character. And well, I was right, they certainly weren't interested in taking up that opportunity, because that situation basically never arises again in the rest of the series. It basically becomes, like a lot of these Disney Plus shows, like Falcon and Winter Soldier anyway, it becomes a sort of basically a chopped up movie, a sort of one long continuous adventure, with each episode basically being another phase in this sort of long helter-skelter run that Loki is on. All the way up to a somewhat strange finale. And this is probably a good time to say, we're covering this twice. The finale is going to shape our opinions of the series, or at least my opinion of the series, fairly substantially. We're probably going to spoiler it to a moderate to strong degree. So if you haven't seen the last episode of Loki and you care about spoilers, I don't know how long you're going to last here, sorry. But yeah, it's an odd series, it's an odd show. I was enjoying it pretty consistently up to episode 5, even as I thought, is this going anywhere, or are they just sort of wandering around? But nonetheless, the places they were going were fun enough, and the performances were engaging enough that I didn't mind a huge amount. And then the last episode, they just sat down and listened to Jonathan Majors talk for half an hour. I did start to think it might have come to a bit of a grinding halt.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to discuss this show without discussing the ending, because as it's a mystery show, kind of like who's behind the TVA, what's the deal, kind of like a Doctor Who type thing. The payoff to the mystery is an essential part of that. That, and also the ending, maybe because it's the ending, but also because of the nature of the ending, which I suppose we'll get into, just completely colored my experience with the whole show. I kind of really can't think about the show without thinking about the ending. But for me, I guess what I'll say before we go full spoiler is that I kind of liked it around the middle. I thought it started well. There was some nice bits in the middle. I was kind of with it up to episode 5, but then episode 6 really didn't left me very cold, and almost to the point that I feel bad about the slightly critical review I had of WandaVision, because WandaVision is hands down the best of these 3 shows, and the ending of Loki just really spoiled me for the whole thing. Very much like being served a turd for dessert at the end of a nice meal. Regardless of how good the food up to that point is, the turd is the thing you're going to take away from that experience.
I can't stop thinking about this turd. It wasn't quite as big a complete ruiner for me, I don't think. It didn't quite get up to a turd, but it was a bit of a... I don't know. As I say, they just wandered around for 5 episodes in a fun way. I was enjoying the concepts, I was enjoying their willingness to film 4 different Lokis, including one who's an alligator. Yeah, cool, that's funny, that's comic-y, I'm down for that. But when it got to the end of episode 5 and nothing had been explained, as I've said before in other reviews, it's often traditional that in the penultimate episode of a TV show, that's when you explain everything, so that the finale isn't bogged down with a huge weight of exposition. I mean, that's exactly what they did in WandaVision. The penultimate episode of WandaVision was Agatha explains everything, and then the last one was a big fight. I mean, to make a favourable comparison for Loki to WandaVision, I thought the last episode of Loki felt more like a conclusion to Loki. It didn't disappear off into a load of slightly generic Marvel-esque fighting. I thought that WandaVision lost itself a bit there. How much of that was COVID stuff, I don't know. But the last episode of Loki felt like of a piece with the previous 5 episodes. It's just that, the pacing slowed to a halt, and an unrelated character turned up to talk. I don't know. A new character who we didn't have much emotional attachment to turned up to explain a chunk of plot. It just didn't seem to be that much about Loki and Sylvie. I mean, a lot of Loki fans I follow have been complaining that they didn't like the Loki show as a whole, because it wasn't really about Loki. Loki didn't really feel like the protagonist. He felt like he was just being shunted around. At first he was being dragged on Mobius's mission, then he was being dragged on Sylvie's mission. I had some sympathy with that, but I didn't really mind, because I still found the character interaction entertaining. But when we get to the point where both Loki and Sylvie are just being dragged along on this big speech by this other dude, I did get a bit, okay, maybe I see the point a little bit now.
Yeah, I mean, I did find there was not really much mischief from the God of Mischief in this film. There was also, they could have dug into his character a bit more. I mean, there was a lack of characterization that kind of ran through the whole thing, in that you get more of a sense of Loki, from the Thor films, in which he's not the main character, because there's this, you're waiting for the moment when the penny drops and he's going to do something mischievous or betray someone or turn on someone. And again, I was waiting through the whole TV show for this, and there isn't a big kind of moment when you see what Loki's plan all along was, or how his game was, or how he was kind of edging his bets. They never really got to that point, which I felt was very much the essence of the character. I think I did say in our previous short review, that the thing about Loki is after 3 films, he's going to betray whoever he's with at some point, so you're waiting for that to happen. It's hard for that to be a surprise. But that doesn't mean, writers, if you were listening, that you don't do the thing that the character's supposed to do. You find a way to do it in an interesting and surprising way, rather than just, instead of Loki do his kind of mischievous, deceitful trickery thing, he just plods along in someone else's shadow. For me, that didn't work.
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of thought the whole point of bringing back the version of Loki from the original Avengers film, having killed off the slightly more developed version in Infinity War, was that, we would get back to a version of Loki who was a bit less burdened by a conscience and would be more prone to betraying people. But they seem to have just fast-forwarded through that development again. So we've once again got a version of Loki who's, a bit more sad and a bit more self-aware and a bit more here to have emotions rather than betray everybody. which is good for Loki's character development, I guess. Good in his journey towards self-actualization, but not as entertaining.
No, exactly. And then they had Sylvie, who was an interesting character, but I did feel that she was... Again, there was not enough character development. She just kind of came across as generically angry. I mean, they filled in her backstory about why she's angry and the life she's had. So there was some character development, but beyond basically she was treated badly by the TVA, is now angry at them and everyone. I felt, again, there could have been more characterization there.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Sophia Di Martino did a good job of playing Sylvie, and I thought that the acting and the chemistry between them kept the episodes moving along and kept things watchable. As I say, I had no particular problem with just sitting and watching it, even if I was aware that it didn't feel like it was entirely going anywhere some of the time. I mean, I guess at the end the plot was that, Loki has become a slightly more trustworthy, well-actualized person, and then Sylvie betrays him, even though he gives that whole speech at the end about how he can't be trusted, even though he's not really betrayed anyone for a solid few episodes now.
Yeah. I mean, they do have the bit in episode 5 when they have all the different Lokis and they're constantly betraying each other, which was kind of funny. And I guess in that bit they're doing the kind of the Loki betrayal thing, and there's like the different variants, they can't even work together. And I suppose he has a moment when he kind of says, like, look at this, we're just squabbling amongst ourselves. I guess that's trying to illustrate that he's grown as a person and he's not doing that. But yeah, I didn't feel that's particularly interesting development for the character.
The show ends, like the post-credit scene. There isn't really a post-credit scene on the last episode. There's just a graphic revealing there's going to be a second season, which does add to the feeling that this... I don't know, it feels like we're basically halfway through the story, to be honest. That's kind of the problem with coming in and reviewing this as a unit. It doesn't really feel like we've finished the unit. It feels like we've reached a sort of midpoint where what's going on has been explained and now someone needs to do something about it.
Yes, that is exactly... Yeah. You completely nailed it. That is it.
So, coming in and trying to say, well, we've seen it, here's our holistic opinion, I don't really have a whole to review at this point.
But it is presented as a single thing in its own right. It doesn't even say, like, part 2 coming soon. It just says, like, season 2, and seasons are supposed to be, to some degree, self-contained. So it is presented as a thing to be considered as a whole, which is why it's kind of odd to have the exposition bit right at the end.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, I don't know, I mean, if it turns out that, Jonathan Majors is a major character in season 2 of Loki, He Who Remains, or Kang, or whatever he is, and he is a major presence in season 2 of Loki, and this actually is very important setup for the rest of the show, then, okay, I guess maybe this could still turn out to just be a valid building block, but at the moment it just feels like they're just sort of wandering around. But I'll give them this. I genuinely don't know where they're going next. I'm not sure what's going to happen next in this show. I came to the end of that and was like, okay, no idea what the fuck happens now. And in some ways, that's a good thing. But I don't know if I quite enjoyed the process of getting there as much as I should have done.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to see where it goes next. I guess the multiverse is fractured and there's timelines going in all different directions. And there is a film coming out soon called The Multiverse of Madness, so I assume that will pick that up. And according to some brief internet research I did, Kang is going to be the villain in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. I mean, but this is kind of gets to the heart of what I didn't like about the final episode, is that it's doing two things. It's setting up things to be paid off at other points. Multiverse thing for a different film and Kang for Quantumania. But also it's done it by resolving this plot line by bringing in a character who we've not seen before. We haven't really had any intro or building up this character that just comes out of nowhere. If you're an aficionado of the Marvel comics, you might recognize the character and what's going on, but to the people who've seen all MCU stuff so far, it seems that it's a bit Deus Ex Machina just to throw in a character who's like behind it all. Just served to you on a plate, and you're supposed to be like, well, this doesn't bear relation to what I've seen before. I find this confusing, and I feel like there's an important bit that I've been left out, which is kind of the build up to this point. I know there's the mystery of someone who's behind the TVA, but if you had a murder mystery and you've got a country house murder mystery and the murderer is someone who was never at the house, then you're like, well, that's just not really playing fair.
Yeah, no, I saw a lot of people who say, oh, it's going to be Kang, and I was like, no, it's probably going to be another version of Loki or Thor or Odin, or maybe Sylvie will have been the baddie all along, something that actually pays off the show we've just watched. So I was quite surprised that no, it actually is just a new dude. Okay.
I don't know. I know there's a section of the fan base that kind of really like it when they bring in new characters and really open up the possibilities of what to do next. I mean, as you said in the Black Widow review, they're always building forwards, always leading to the next thing. And I can kind of see what they're doing here is like they're bringing in stuff for Quantumania, they're bringing in stuff for Multiverse of Madness. But again, this is supposed to be a thing in its own right. I understand there's people who want new characters brought in, but they do have to be built up in the show. It's not playing fair on the audience you have to throw in things that haven't been set up. It's just bad writing.
it's weird, because there's nothing theoretically stopping them from bringing in Jonathan Majors earlier as, I don't know, an ominous janitor or something, and then revealing he's the guy in charge.
Yeah, exactly. That would have worked so much better, yeah.
I'm not saying that the ominous janitor option is the best writing they could have done, but,
it's better than what they did do.
There's ways of doing that. Although, obviously, as Kevin Feige would no doubt tell me were he here, they would have boned themselves doing that, because they've announced that Jonathan Majors is in Ant-Man now. So, as soon as he appeared, everyone would go, well, it's him, isn't it? He's the mysterious mastermind. Look at him, there he is, being ominous.
Yeah.
Maybe the Marvel publicity machine would have found a way to avoid announcing him if they were trying to do that. I don't know, I'm not Kevin Feige or God. But I didn't think the reveal entirely worked. Although the last 15 minutes of the finale, once he finally stops talking, are quite exciting in their way. The showdown between Loki and Sylvie does just about work as some kind of payoff to the relationship between them, thanks to the work the actors have done. I'll give them that.
Yeah, and again, also, it's just the ending was just a lot of dialogue as well. Like, there wasn't even like an action scene or something like that. You know, they weren't fighting over a MacGuffin or something like that. They were just sat at their desk, kind of talking, and they're not even particularly like sparkly dialogue. Which again, you know, as you said, would have worked great in a sort of episode 5 kind of time, but not really for your big finale.
Hey, they eventually had a sword fight.
They did.
And then they kissed in a way that everyone seems sexually confused by. Is he kissing himself? Is it incest?
That was odd. I mean, it's difficult to know what to feel about this, like, because how would you relate to yourself from, like, another timeline?
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering if they'd actually have them kiss on screen, just because of how weird it slightly is. So, fair enough on them for showing it, I suppose. You know, in some ways, I'm always down for Marvel embracing weirdness. Although, in other ways, as others have pointed out, is there a degree of anticlimax to having him come out as bisexual and then spend the next few episodes having sexual chemistry with a woman? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's again the kind of this reluctance to show queer characters in any way, shape or form in kind of major Disney properties.
I mean, obviously, I'm aware that him being bisexual therefore means he's perfectly open to be attracted to women. It's just, you know, the continuing pattern of queer representation in Marvel stuff where they mention it but are suspiciously reluctant to show anything resembling same-sex intimacy of any kind.
Yeah, it was queer baiting. They kind of tease these things and then refuse to put them on screen. I think something that, if you want to be a 21st century franchise, you should move on from this kind of hint, hint, wink, wink, and then not showing it. I did think that the cast they put together for the show was very good, and I did really like, as you say, like Tom Hiddleston is very good as Loki, and he's got a lot of charisma. You know, Sophie Di Martino, she's good in the role. Like I say, I think they could have written Sylvia better. Owen Wilson, I mean, he's great in almost everything. He's very funny, and he's been a big film star. He's quite a good get for a TV show. I really liked Richard E. Grant's cameo in episode 5. Wumi Masaka, who's also in Lovecraft Country with Jonathan Majors, and also is in a great film called His House on Netflix with Matt Smith. So there's a lot of really great cast in this.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed the whole cast. I think my main feeling about the Owen Wilson character was that I'm disappointed that they basically abandoned the whole TVA section after about episode 2, because it meant that they didn't get Owen Wilson that much to do. I just felt like they were fast forwarding through the material a bit. Like, I feel like there should have been a good season of material. It felt like there should have been a whole season of material of Loki and Mobius interacting at the TVA, so that their relationship was more nuanced and deep than it was on screen based on the 2 episodes they had, or 1 episode and a half. There's a bit at the end towards the end, I think, of episode 5, where they have an emotional goodbye, and I was a bit sort of, if only you'd actually spent enough time together to make this feel warranted.
Yeah, and he didn't get his jet ski. I was really hoping for that for a post-credit sequence.
Another reason why I'm pretty sure this is basically actually season half or something, the first half of the story.
Yeah, and I'm kind of disappointed they moved on from the TVA stuff, and like say, they have Owen Wilson, who's great, and then he's really good in the first couple of episodes, and they don't really use him much after it. Wumi Masaka is excellent in the early episodes. I think she's only in 2 very short scenes in the final episode. Again, they got this great cast, which I feel, again, kind of squandered, especially in the later episodes. Like I say, Richard E. Grant is a great, 1 episode appearance for episode 5, but they really could have done more with the cast they had if they were telling the story more grounded in the story they started to tell from the beginning, rather than the story they were telling at the end, which almost seemed like a completely different story.
Yeah, I honestly feel like this review has ended up coming out slightly more negative than I feel about it, just because the pacing of the finale soured me on it a little. I guess it's what you were saying about turds. Because, yeah, I was actually well disposed to this show, for the most part, up for episode 5, and even in the closing moments of episode 6, it's just that Jonathan Majors speech really was a strange bit of pacing. But, you know, the rest of it is an entertaining romp, even if a slightly strangely paced one, and one that sometimes feels like episodes, like the episode, I want to say episode 3, is it? The Lamentis one? The one which is set entirely on that apocalypse planet, or mostly anyway. That's a decent sequence, although it feels like it should be about 20 minutes of a movie. It has instead been spread out to be 40 minutes of TV. But still, it's enjoyable enough, and they're all enjoyable enough for the most part. It's a decent romp in a sort of vaguely Doctor Who tradition. Perfectly watchable, and it's why I'll be back for season 2, even if I complain a bit about the last episode of this one.
Yeah, that bit was very good. I liked the bit in the episode before that when they were kind of going to the different apocalypses. There was like the rain-soaked one in America, and there was the bit in Pompeii. So yeah, the whole thing actually gave off quite good Doctor Who vibes, which I liked. Especially with the bit like climaxes with them going to the end of time and finding the last living creature at the end of time, which I thought was very Doctor Who. I mean, maybe again this is coming out more negative than it should be. I was kind of more on board with it until the last episode. It's just the last episode really was a letdown. And as you say, it's probably because it's really building towards the second half of the story. So yeah, it was just disappointing, but I was more into it. There were a few criticisms, like there could have been better characterization. I was into it more before, and I think overall I preferred this to, say, Falcon and Winter Soldier. But apart from this last episode, just really was a letdown.
Well, it's just more my sort of thing, this sort of Doctor Who good place intersection than Falcon and Winter Soldier, which is, I guess, more from the homeland area of Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas this is more from the silliness and more from this sort of whimsical cosmic fantasy, which I'm far more in favour of, even if I'm not sure this is their best version of it. But yeah, it's hard not to feel the last episode was a bit of a letdown, but just for my enjoyment of watching Tom Hiddleston go, I'll probably be back for the next season. Fair enough. Okay, and that was this fortnight's Marvel special episode of Moderate Fantasy Violence. Thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed our Marvel coverage, then you can find a lot more of that by going to our website at moderatefantasyviolence.com, in which, yes, you can find our previous episodes, outtakes from those episodes, and essays about other things, some of which are Marvel, some of which aren't. And if you've enjoyed anything whatsoever about anything, you can go to your podcatcher of choice and leave us a nice review. Thank you very much.
You can also find us on Twitter, where we're at MFV Podcast, or find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/Moderate Fantasy Violence, or by searching for Moderate Fantasy Violence. You can also find me on Twitter, where I'm at Alistair J.R. Ball, and you can find more of my writing at redtrainblog.com.
I've been Nick Bryan. You can find more from me at my website, nickbryan.com, or nickmb on Twitter, including now the notification page for my latest Kickstarter, which allows you to click a little button and then get an email when we start. So why not do that? It should be launching in the next couple of weeks, like alarmingly close to when our next episode comes out. So, yep, we're doing that again. It is happening again. Be ready. And speaking of our next episode, though, in that one, assuming that the UK's attempt to unlock COVID restrictions holds up, we're both double vaccinated now, so we'll be popping to the cinema to see The Suicide Squad for you. And then, far less riskily, we'll also be staying home to watch the new season of Biohackers on Netflix. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Although I don't have off the top of my fingers what?